so you know. And okay, so everybody remember how to navigate to the ordinances online. Okay. A lot of people were able to find the answer to my extra credit, which was what's the minimum center line? And most people nailed it. One person was actually able to figure out that this particular municipality had a minor inconsistency. It's actually labeled 200 in one spot, but 225 feet in another spot for the center line radius. We're going to go with 200. Okay. Now that's the minimum. That's the minimum requirement. So as the design engineer, are you required to do the absolute minimum? You're required to do the absolute minimum. Could you do more? Yes. Sure. You have to decide if that would help you or hurt you in terms of your design. Okay. Would it benefit it or would it not? We talked about how going in and getting the minimum lot geometry. That's in the zoning, right? So most people were able to sort out the zoning stuff. I want to go to the salvo. Because I want to start talking about some of the street design standards. So 22A is the subdivision and land development. So whenever you submit as an engineer or a surveyor drawings to a municipality, right, there's different things you can submit. So typically you start off with a sketch plan. That goes through 2 or 3 meeting cycles. Then you go to a preliminary plan, then you go to a final. Sometimes the municipality feels like, okay, if you've gone through the sketch plan phase, we've seen it, we think it's pretty cut and dry, and they will allow you to combine the preliminary and final as one thing, and it's preliminary final, because they don't see a lot wrong with what you're proposing. So that's an option to save your client time if the municipality allows it. Okay, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So those are all the requirements for submitting a plan. Right? They talk about fees, like what sort of fee schedule does your client need to pay? How many sets of the drawings do you need? And all of the general requirements, what the deadline is, what day and time do they need to be at the township for the submittal for the following month. Okay. So if you're going to submit it for a November planning commission, okay, that's the board that's going to review it, the planning commission. There's a deadline. It's usually 3 weeks, 30 days before the date of the meeting. So they have time to look at it and comment on it and what they like, what they didn't like. What do you need to negotiate and work out? You interpret the ordinance this way, their attorney or their engineer interprets it differently. Okay? Sometimes it's not always black and white. What I wanted to go over is this section here, design standards. So you have general performance standards, then you have block design standards, lot design standards, and street design standards. So in there, in addition to the minimum geometry that's listed in the zoning, they talk about the angles of the lots. So the reason they do that is they want to limit some of the really funky looking lot geometries that you could end up with, right? They want to make it as uniform as possible. Let's take a look at street design standards. That doesn't mean you're exempt from not looking at these other areas. There's some stuff in there that's going to be helpful for you. I want to go over the important stuff, the street design standards. Now, that's not to say that the other stuff isn't just as important. You need to look at it. If you have trouble understanding what it's saying, come and ask me questions about it. All right. General requirements, okay, it should follow PennDOT's requirements. Yeah, PennDOT is the overarching. Everybody remember what the right of way is? You looked at it. It's kind of like the property line for the street. Okay. This will be put up on the Google Drive. So it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like the property line for the street. Okay. It's 50 foot wide, 20 foot, 25 foot for the center line of the street. And then the road itself, the paved area of the road between the curbs is 30 feet, 15 feet on either side of the center. Okay. Then you have a 10-foot area where you've got a 5-foot space to plant street trees. Then you've got a 4-foot sidewalk and a 1-foot sort of buffer area between the back of the sidewalk and the right of way to kind of ensure constructability, that it actually gets built in the road right away. Okay, questions about that? Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that you're going to need to account for, right? But that you're not necessarily going to get into design for just yet. Okay. Have you guys taken fluids yet? Some yes, some no. Some will take it soon. So can I tell you to design a detention basin? No, of course I can't. Like, not at this point. By the time you graduate, you should know enough that you should be able to at least get a preliminary blush at it. But what I can do is tell you that you need to set aside so much area for detention, for storing stormwater. What is something else that you can think of that you would need to take account for before you start chopping up your lots and laying out your roads? What else would you want? If I was the municipality, what would I want for you to reserve for me? Piping, but most of that's going to be in the street. Jules, sorry, I called you Bill. My bad. Most of that is going to be in the road. And what's not, what goes overland, you'll provide an easement for. So the property owner will still own the land, but if they need to go in and maintain it. So I'm not going to ask for that. Any other ideas? I touched on it briefly. So what I'm going to do is go to Google and type PABMP. Okay. Okay. So there's a couple places you can download this and look at. Okay. If you click on the first one, it kind of drops you into it, gives you the individual chapters. I think the second one gives you the whole document. Yes. So this is from 2006. Now, by the time you graduate, the update for this manual will be published. All right. Do you need to design the BMPs for your subdivision? Does anybody remember what I said what BMPs were before? Does anybody remember what they are? Stands for Best Management Practices. PCSM is an acronym for Post-Construction Stormwater Management. Okay, so rewind 15 years. All we had to do as engineers was control rate, how quick the water was coming off the site. Okay. Now we have to take into account post-construction stormwater. Because if I pave an entire area for a subdivision, for a road, am I going to generate the same amount of stormwater as I did before? What's going to happen to the volume of stormwater back? I mean, what? So we need to account for that. That's what post-construction stormwater is. So in addition to looking at the zoning ordinance, I want you to look at the BMP manual and select 2 BMPs that you're going to incorporate. You're not going to design them. You're just going to say, I like these 2 options. Okay. So if you go down to the index, chapter 1 and 2 are kind of the overview of why we're doing this. If you're motivated and want to read it, awesome. Then it starts getting into recommended control guidelines, integrating importance of chapters 5 and 6. Non-structural BMPs and structural BMPs. How many did I say I want you to select? 2. 1 from each. I want a non-structural and a structural. And you're going to tell me what they are. Whether or not you label it on your drawing or put it in the table or whatever. You can take a look at these and see what you think makes the most sense for your design. Could you tack it up on the wall and get a dart and just pick one? You could. There isn't a whole lot of engineering in that method. What I would suggest is looking at it and saying, well, would it work? You know, what is rooftop disconnection? You could flip to that section of the manual and look, but rooftop disconnection is basically the downspouts from the roof. A lot of more modern subdivisions have them tying into the storm system. Now they've realized, well, it kind of makes more sense for it to run across the ground and have at least a little bit better of a chance of infiltrating. Is it perfect? No. Street sweeping. Well, a lot of municipalities do that anyway. Okay. So then as you go through the manual, for each one, it kind of gives you a picture of what it looks like, what the benefits are, a little bit of a cross section of it, potential applications. That's a helpful little table for each one. If it says residential, no, commercial, yes, would that be a good one to pick? No, right? You're doing a residential subdivision, not a commercial super box store XYZ. Right. Everyone okay with at least looking at the BMP manual and selecting your BMPs? Right. So you're going to set aside a space for detention. You're going to set aside a space for your PCSM BMPs. And I'll tell you what the areas are that you need to set aside. The last thing is a recreation area. And whether or not the municipality wants to build a park or reserve it for some other purpose, you're going to donate that area as recreation space. And I'll tell you how big those spaces need to be. Everyone following all of that? I'm the store. So, you know,
What's the difference between the BMP and the stormwater detention?
So the purpose of these is you have different frequency storms. Okay. The 2-year storm isn't the storm that happens every 2 years. It's the storm that has a 50-50 shot of occurring every time it rains. What they want you to do is you have pre-development and post-development. You're going to create more storm water after you do your development post than pre. With me so far? You're looking at the 2-year storm. The difference between the 2-year post-development and the 2-year pre-development is what these are for. That's the volume you're going to treat. That's the amount of water you're going to treat. Do you need to know that volume? No. All you need to do is look at one of these and go, I think these will work in my development. I think these will be economical. So you're treating the difference between pre and post as a way to make up for that additional impervious cover that you're putting on the ground. So you have to do something. So some of these BMPs are defined as capture and reuse. That's kind of self-explanatory, right? Can you think of some capture and reuse methods for PCSM? Oh, come on, think sustainability is beating into your head. Rain barrel? That's capture and reuse. You dump it into a bin and then watering your garden. Think of another one? Irrigation ditches, right? On a more large scale, like a big development, you can have your pond over detain water and put a pump in it and have the irrigation system, instead of being hooked to the city water where the developer would need to pay the bill, you're capturing the rainwater and they're getting to irrigate their lawns without impacting drinking water. Great. So yeah, exactly what you said, irrigation channels, but also, you know, you can take it to another level. And you know, we had done a residential development. It was an age restricted, so you had to be 55 and older to buy a house in this place. That was the one I was telling you about, where they had a golf course incorporated in it. So it's private, so they want their golf course and they want their green and they want their lawns and blah blah blah. And we put ponds in to over detain and irrigate so that they didn't have to buy city. We just made the detention basin a little bit deeper than it needed to be, about 4 feet. So you don't end up with like a mosquito breeding ground. You want enough depth there that like 6 inches of water isn't going to cut. Right. Any other questions about this? It's more concept-wise that you're kind of thinking through, hey, will this work in my development? Not necessarily, I want you to worry about the design of it. Does that sound reasonable? And I'll tell you how big a space you need to set aside. So we'll talk about lot areas and how to get your lot areas and all that stuff. Friday, I'm going to bring in a copy of the existing features plan for this. You don't need to create it. It's going to be given to you. In fact, I'll give each crew their own full size of it. Because sometimes drawing and sketching with CAD, it's not very, I don't know what the right word is. Sometimes having a sheet of paper and some pencils and just kind of laying out ideas, I think works a little better. It kind of lets you work through a process. So bring pencils, pencil erasers, all that stuff. So that's the BMP meeting. Good? Okay. So we'll get to setting aside different space for things. But what I do want to do is start looking at, so you'll be given a copy of this. So there's already an existing subdivision up here. I already have the CAD file up. So if you're feeling ambitious, there's a folder on our Google Drive for CAD files. There's an existing features, and then there's an existing contours. I have them separate, and I'm going to show you how to bring them in as X references and look at it like that and the benefit of that. But you can start at least looking at your design. Okay, so you've got a road out here, and you've got a road down here along the bottom. Right. So I'm going to zoom in here. And I just want to look at the topography. So the elevation out here. Everybody see this? What elevation is that? 434. Yeah, here's 430. 31, 32, 33. So the center is about 434 where this existing subdivision. Okay. So right here on our property, you're right, it's probably close to 430-ish, give or take. So now if we go down to the other end, right? So there's houses here, there's houses here. We come down to the other end. What's my elevation down here, down in this place? Yeah, I mean, here's 408, here's 412. So it kind of, everybody see the road has like a drop off here. So the road is, let's say, 412. Okay, so this end is lower than the other end. Everybody kind of see that? Okay, so here's the Pennsylvania Turnpike along this side. So then if we work our way up through the site to get an idea of this. Everybody see how the contours kind of loop around here? Is this the top of the hill or the, like, a bowl? Everybody see this is 397. Okay. Everybody see this kind of little wedge here? What's this? It's ground, yeah, but is it a berm or a hole? So you know, what's that? Yeah. Does this look natural? Or does this look like somebody like dug out a swimming pool and just dumped the dirt out? Or did a garden, or I don't know. It's just a junk pond, most likely. Right? Do you think you can do anything back here? Well, let me ask you more specifically. Do you think you can build a house back here? Probably not, right? Especially right next to the turnpike. Okay. That's kind of up to you to sort out. Okay. This line here, okay, there's existing pieces of ground, right, that we're combining into one bigger piece. And I'll show you that in the CAD file on Friday, what the limits of what your development can be. Okay. Everyone with me so far? Back to looking at the contours. Okay, then it starts working its way back uphill. So now you're at 415, 420. And then, you know, it's at its highest over here. Here's the highest spot. The other road is lower, but then it's lower in the site, right? So our development is this little triangle here, straight out, straight down to here, then across, down, and along the road right away from the terminal. Do we think that the road for my subdivision can go out onto the terminal? Why not?
It's changed there.
What was that?
Speed change.
Speed change.
It's not that quick.
That's true that. The turnpike, the road, the style of the road is called limited access right. That tells you everything you need to know. You can only have so many access points. You'd have to build an interchange. Unfortunately, you're right, we're not having.
And the exit is pretty big. Take up like half.
Right. Yeah, like, and there's developments, you see all of these are houses that are on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
So you're never going to condemn all of those houses.
Right.
You know, and be able to do another interchange. So an interchange is off the table. So you can't tie your roads into the traffic. Let's talk about detention ponds. Do you need to design it? No, I'm going to give you the space requirement that you need. So you don't need to design it, but you do need to think about where you're going to put it. Is that a good spot? Why not? Right, somebody said it, it's the highest point on the ground. So to get the stormwater to it, you'd have to pump. Do we want to pump stormwater? Nope, this isn't New Orleans. It's probably not a good idea. A, because of the expense, and B, because with a little bit of logical design, you know, we could put it where it should. How about down here? Down here, it's better, but it's not right there, right in the low spot, right? That makes the most sense. Put it. Now, post-construction stormwater. You can handle it two different ways. Okay. If the water going into your pump, if you treat it before it gets there, really complicated term, it's called pre-treatment. Does it make a lot of sense for me to do my pre-treatment way up here? How about as close as I can get it to it within reason? Now, if this is your detention and you can get enough water to this, could you utilize that little wedge? Maybe, maybe, but you'd have to figure out a way to get the water to it, right? Because it still sits a bit higher than that. So maybe that's not really a good idea. Maybe you don't want to do pre-treatment. Do you have to pre-treat the water? No, you just have to store and set aside that space to do something with this water. Everybody follow the things that I want you to be thinking about, at least conceptually? Okay. So I will upload the CAD files for this. I'm going to show you how to get areas for this. Okay. I'm going to upload a bunch of different sample examples of subdivisions that we've done that you can use as a guide. Okay. What do we think this is? Let me zoom in. That big enough that most people can read it? What does it say? It's an inactive fuel, right? Inactive gas. So it's inactive. So they're willing to remove that and remediate it in accordance with. So does that mean you can go across there? Like with your road, can your road cross that? Sure can. Sure. Are they going to want to completely abandon their rights to that easement going across the property? No, but that doesn't mean that you can't relocate it for them to a spot that's more convenient for your subdivision. If it were my easement or right of, what would I want as a minimum? Like if you're like, okay, we'll pay to remove it, the line, the physical line itself, but what are you going to want to give me in return if I let you move that? Continued access. But if I have 50 feet now and you're like, I'll give you 25 feet, am I going to be amenable to that? Right. I want either equal or greater in return. So can you relocate that swath? Yeah. Does it necessarily have to pick up and end at these 2 points? Not necessarily. I mean, it should. Could you go this way with it? Or down this way with it? Or you could relocate. You could leave it where it is and just make that your side lot lines and build it on either side of it. Does that make sense? You can't just completely ignore it. It just needs to be accounted. Side notes. Let's talk about some things that would affect. So you see this gray line here and here, and it has these letter designations. Those are soil types. Different types of soil shed water differently and take on water differently. From a hydrology point of view, you have hydraulics and hydraulics. Anybody know the difference? Hydrology is how the stormwater flows over the ground and stuff like that. Hydraulics is I'm going to capture it in a pipe and run it to a detection. So the hydrology is how it's going to run across the ground. And also how your detention basin is going to function. That's hydrology also. Hydraulics is basically your pipe. Where was I going with that? The soil types tell you hydrologic soil, how quickly the water sheds from one spot to another. Now, if I had a spot on here where I had a hatch pattern, and that hatch pattern was the little cattail hatch pattern, what does that mean? Anybody ever see that? Typically on a plan, when you see the little hatch pattern, does everybody know what I mean by cattails? No.
Corn dogs. At the top, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like little corn dogs.
Yeah.
Where do you usually see that? What's that? Sorry. But I heard you say
Yeah.
swamp, wetland. Right. Wetland. If there was wetland on here, can I pave my road right through it?
No.
Probably not.
if it is identified as a wetland, even if it was through the middle of the development, leave it alone. Can you relocate wetlands? According to the letter of the law, yeah, you could. Is there a benefit to it? Remember what I said. You also need to keep in the back of your mind that ASCE code of ethics. If it was a bridge and that bridge was necessary for, I don't know, access to whatever, are there ways to handle it with a bridge? You're minimizing the footprint that it's just the pier that would be in it. And you could set your piers far enough away that you're minimizing your impact as much as possible. Are we gonna build a bridge with piers in a small scale subdivision? No. You still wanna be thinking of your requirement to adhere to those principles of sustainable development. But it's always at a competing interest with, what is your client going to want at the end of the day from your layout? Most likely. Many houses as possible. That's where they're going to make the most amount of profit. But again, it's a balance between a sustainable thing and cramming as many houses in as you can. All stuff that you need to think of. Questions about some of the concepts? By Friday, I'm going to have the requirements up for all of this. Okay. I'm going to have examples. I'm going to have, I'll actually have paper copies to give to each group that you can start doing pencil sketches. But what I want to start looking at a little bit is the schedule. So we're here at the 17th. Okay. 24th, 25th, 26th, no classes, right? Last day of classes is when? All right. 10th. Last day of class is the 10th. So we have 1, 2, 3 lab periods between now and the end of the semester. Semester project is 2 parts. It's the subdivision, but then we're also going to do the vertical part of the roadway design. The subdivision plan has your horizontal layout. It's also going to define the number of lots and all of that. The second part is going to be the roadway profile and the roadway design. We'll talk more about that as we go. We're here. You all have submitted your plan. Okay. The 23rd. How many people are not going to be here on the 23rd? So quite a few.
Well, no, I'll be here.
The reason I'm bringing it up is you have this day, but it's up to you as a crew, as a team, to decide how you're going to get this done. The subdivision design is going to be due, right? You're going to have this period. We're going to get back here, okay, on the 29th. The design for the vertical part of the road is going to be due last day of class. Okay, that's going to be your last thing that's going to be shipped. We need to decide when this week the road design is going to be due. Or I'm sorry, the subdivision design, the first part of this is going to be due. I propose that it's either the 29th or the 1st. If I make it the 1st, I know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to be doing the rest of their subdivision design on the Thursday, rather than starting to look at the road designs. I'm okay with it being the first and you having 2 lab periods to do it. Thoughts? And then you will have from the 1st to the 10th to get your road design done. Sure.
My thoughts are do the first and actually have it.
Okay.
Which part of the project you think is harder or will take longer? Subdivision, the road,
Subdivision.
I would say the first.
Any dissenting opinions? Chris?
I don't have, I agree with the 2 to 20, that's probably kind of what the one person has to do, or they get break.
Any differing opinions? So we're all in agreement that the subdivision is going to be due on the 1st. You'll have these 2 lab periods to work on. If you choose not to work on it here, I'm not expecting you to work over it. But if you don't work on it here at all, and you get to here and there's technical difficulties, oh boy. Right? So I would not suggest, like, you can start looking at the CAD files now. Right? You can go and download the existing features plan and start taking a look at it, maybe even start doing some offsetting and where you're thinking about putting stuff and thinking about this area for this. My current thinking is that your recreation area is going to be 5,000 square feet, your detention pond is 4,000, and your PCSM area is 2,000. And then the rest of it, you're going to lay out using the ordinances. Ego.
We say like 5,000 square feet, I like to make it anywhere I want. Like, does it
Like,
have to be
you mean
like
shape or you mean bigger?
shape, like, does it have to be like a 50 by 100?
Well, it's for a detention pond, so I wouldn't make it 10 feet wide and 500 feet long. Right? But no, there's no real requirements on can it be an odd shape. No, it can be in whatever shape you want it to be. It just, I wouldn't make it this long skinny thing that you're never going to be able to construct that. Right.
For the 2,000 square feet for the PCSM, is that include the 2,000 for,
It's 2,000 for the whole shoot. So if you want to do like a pre and a post treatment area, and you want to do 1,000 and 1,000, you can do that. If you want to put all your eggs in one basket, 2,000 foot in one spot, you can do that also. Did that answer your question? So on the Google Drive, there's a folder for semester project. There's some stuff already there. Start looking at it. Start thinking about ideas. Start setting the sheet up, right? Because there was issues with sheet setup. Start setting the sheet up so that you have a picture. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? So Friday, I'm going to start going over the ins and outs of the CAD file and getting areas for different things and right, going over some of the Lisp commands that are helpful. If you had trouble making your sheet and getting the annotations and the scales and stuff to print right with the viewport, you might want to spend a little time either figuring out what that problem is or asking me to give you a hand. Okay. So I'm going to finish refining this and get it to you. I'll get you all the background information, but like I said, start looking at it now. That way we're not all in the lab at 8 o'clock tonight. Not that I mind. Okay. All right, that's all I had for today. I will see all of you